Hi, I'll continue with paragraph 9 from the chapter on the Mordent in Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach's Versuch über die wahre Art, das Klavier zu spielen. Der Mordent überspringenden und abgestoßenen Noten gibt ihnen einen Glanz. Es wird hierzu meistenteils der Kürze gebraucht. Man findet ihn über Noten, welche man in Ansehung der Harmonie anschlagende zu nennen pflegt und welche daher oft von besonderem Gewichte sind. Figur 75a. Bei gewissen Breckungen B. Und bei vollstimmigen Griffen in der Mitte C. Alvo bei einer etwas langen Note auch der lange Mordent statthaben kann. Diese Manier kommt ebenfalls vor bei abgestoßenen punktierten Noten, wo die Punkte nicht gehalten werden, D. Und wo Pausen darauf folgen, E. Wenn nach einigen kurzen Noten, welche teils eine Sekunde steigen, F, teils springen, G, eine längere nachfolget, so wird bei dieser letzteren angebracht. In the paragraphs I've just covered, paragraphs 7 and 8, Bach was talking about notes that are to be held out. And now, in this paragraph, he's dealing with leaping and detached notes. That'll help putting order to the last batch of videos and the bigger picture. These are all pieces of a bigger picture. He tells us that the Mordent gives such notes a brilliance, a glance, which again is instruction on the good performance, der gute Vortrag. And, like I've said before, if you know why the ornament has been added by the composer, to what end, you can better determine when you are doing it correctly. Am I doing it right? I don't know. Is it giving the note a brilliance? When will I be doing it right? When the note has a brilliance. Or you can better determine whether the instruction you are getting from the roll of honor is correct or not. You can either ask yourself, am I achieving the desired effect? Or is it achieving the desired effect? It being the roll of honor's instruction on when, how, and in what way the ornament is to be performed. Incidentally, you've never heard from them, and never will hear from them, why or to what end an ornament has been added. You can think of your lessons, you can think of the lectures, you can think of your master classes, you can think of those videos on YouTube. Look where you like. You're not going to find any instance where you will see them saying why or to what end an ornament has been added. When the Mordent is giving the note a brilliance, as opposed to it filling out the note, or hanging slurred or legato notes together, the Mordent might then have a greater speed or velocity, or a sharpness, which is what Bach calls die Schärfe. And die Schärfe is one of the key characteristics of Mozart and Bach and classical music performance. Again, you will have never heard the Roll of Honour in all their glory talk about the Sherfa. After that, he says, the short mordent is used for the most part when dealing with leaping and detached notes. This is information that could be useful for the pro and con list, one's list of pros and cons. If you're not sure if a mordent you encounter in a piece should be long or short, one of the weighing in factors could be that you look to see if the note it's over is leaping, or if the note it's over is detached, or both. And in the paragraph, Bach is going on to illustrate some of the ways notes can be detached. In figure 75a, we see that the notes are leaping, and we can figure that they might also be detached. Such a deduction shows how the presence of an ornament can shed light on other aspects of interpretation when one is properly informed. That means when one has been supplied with both accurate information and sufficient information. Regarding 75a, Bach gives us extra information, saying one finds the mordent over notes which one, with respect to the harmony, tends to dub struck, and which thus are often of a particular weight. Welche man in Ansehung der Harmonie anschlagende zu nennen pflegt. Anschlagende are notes that are struck with the harmony. Bach refers to them in Book 2 of his Versuch. The note that's struck after the harmony he calls the nachschlagende Note. He also refers to them as the notes, according to their inner value or worth, den innerlichen Werte nach, that are long. So he refers to them as well as the notes that are long according to the inner value or the inner worth, den innerlichen Werte nach. And after that he has in brackets the word virtualiter. I'm not sure. I doubt I'm pronouncing it correctly, but that's a Latin word. And I typed the word into Google, and virtualiter can mean practical. So a Latin word, or virtual, I'd guess. So being such in essence or effect. And Bach says that among notes of equal value, the first, the third, etc. are long according to the inner worth, and the second, fourth, etc. are short. So, among notes of equal value, on the page, in the theory, if you think the 4 notes, let's say 4 8 notes, they are all of equal value. And according to the inner value, the first and the third are long, and the second or fourth are short. And I just say a word of warning to anybody who might want to get carried away and turn that into dogma or make that, a false god. In saying that, Bach saying that the first and the third are long according to the inner value and the second and fourth are short, he would still demand of the performance of those 4 8 notes, he'd still demand the utmost evenness when playing those 8 notes. So just keep that in mind. We can notice how Bach adds that the struck notes, the anschlagenden Noten, are often of a particular or special weight. He doesn't say always. All the notes that have been given mordents in figure 75 are such notes. So too is the F in figure 73. Whereas the corresponding notes of figure 74D and the alternate version of A have not been giving mordents, despite them being the struck notes, the anschlagenden Noten. We can see from the other examples of figure 73 how an appoggiatura displaces the mordent. On paper, the note that was given a mordent is the struck note, but in effect or in the execution, the appoggiatura has become the struck note, which still has the particular weight Bach references, but doesn't get the mordent. And even though the principal note becomes the nachschlagende Note, it keeps its mordent. In that case, as Bach has told us, the mordent is hanging the slurred or legato notes together. Again, that'll help putting order to the bigger picture. And if you think of the first bar of the Goldberg variations, I don't think I'm not going to demonstrate it. But if you look at that mordent, you can, thanks to Bach, you can look at it and then you can think, what is that mordent there to do? Is it there to give the note a brilliance? Is it there to fill it out? Or is it there to hang the notes together? And what's happening there? I don't know if anybody can appreciate it or not, but what is happening there is you are getting to see the score and understand it on a deeper level, and a level that's closer to Bach. So, to get back to the current examples, in figure 75A, Bach provides two examples of such notes, struck with the harmony, getting mordents, and with those mordents, a brilliance, a glance. In the first example of figure 75b of a certain breaking, to translate gewisse Breckungen, or of broken chords or broken harmony, we again see the struck notes getting the mordent. And we can as well think that they might be detached. In the next, Bach provides an example where the first broken chord figure has a rest instead of a struck note. And he shows the remainder of that figure going through without a mordent. And the figure that follows, the one that has a struck note, getting the mordent. This pattern is then repeated. If you encounter such an example in a score with that insight, you can guess what might have been. You can garner much more information or insight from the situation than you might have been able to before, with the lack of information coming from the roll of honour. You can imagine what that rest might be replacing, which could help when it comes to playing the rest, as they say. That term, the roll of honour, will pay lip service to, but that is beyond their comprehension. A rest that's played belongs to the El Dorado of the perfect performance, when the stars align and you do things, you know, where everything goes right, and you do, and then maybe they play the rest, but it never happens. So you will never hear, experience in the roll of honour a rest being played, and that's why they're not able to hold the rests out for the proper length of time. As soon as they stop, the silence, it's not a pregnant silence or a full silence, or it's flat, it's dead, it's empty, and then the time gets too long. So they're not able to hold the rest out for its proper length. And in the pieces I upload that demonstrate the true way to play the piano, you will see it is there to be noticed for anybody who is able to notice. It's there to be noticed that every single rest, every silence is loaded, is full, is potent. You can cut through the silence with a knife every single time I play it. And those recordings, they're recordings of how I play all the time. And this is to show that the true way to play the piano is superior than the bad way, as Bach calls it, or as I might call it, the false way to play the piano. And it is that the superiority of my playing over everybody else's in the roll of honor, that is a testament to it being the true way to play the piano. And that can be studied, and I'd welcome the serious study of it. I'd welcome, scientists studying the precision, the accuracy. I'd welcome a serious study with the score of the flawlessness of the harmonic tension, of the pulse, of the phrasing, of the articulation, of the voice leading, the presence of and the perfection of every single note in all the voices, in the soprano, the bass and the middle voices. And the more serious the study is, the more accurate the answer will be as to, if what I'm saying is the truth or not. Then Bach says the Mordent can come with vollstimmigen Griffen in the middle. So with full voiced clutches. So chords whose voices are struck or gripped all at once. Here's figure 75C where that happens. That as well could be a potential way to vary the repeat of a section. So if there's a chord, if there's chords to be played, it could be that when that section is repeated, that one could experiment with that and see if a mordent in the middle of that chord doesn't, violate the intentions of the composer, and thus provide a variation for the repeat. And then Bach says that in that case, when there is a somewhat long note, the long mordent can also be used. And to fit word to action, he provided an example with the sign for a long mordent. Now, despite the clear aid of the text, Bärenreiter get this wrong. They put in the sign for a short mordent, just like they did in figure 73A, as well displaying there a complete disregard for the accompanying text, or a complete obliviousness to the text, in which Bach says, "So muss die Hauptnote lang sein, damit sie so viel als nötig ist von ihrer Geltung verlieren könne, diesem Vorschlage durch einen langen Mordenten einen Nachdruck zu geben." So, despite the help from the text, they get that wrong too, as they do in figure 56A, where they indicated a trill with an afterstroke, despite Bach saying, "Die letzte Note von diesem Doppelschläge wird unterhalten, dass man also ohne Ekel gar wohl nach einem kleinen Zwischenraume in den darauffolgenden langen Mordenten hineingehen kann." This is our roll of honor, the ones who enjoy a reputation, the ones who wrote in their introduction, Bach konnte mit Recht stolz darauf sein, dass sowohl der Text als auch die Noten in seinen beiden Versuchen nahezu fehlerfrei waren. Lediglich eine Stelle ist uns aufgefallen, die inhaltlich problematisch ist. Den Pralltriller lokalisiert Bach zunächst vor einer fallenden Sekunde. In Wahrheit sitzt er aber auf der zweiten Note, mithin nach einer fallenden Sekunde. Deshalb sollte man auch an der ersten Stelle nachlesen. So, Bärenreiter is telling you how to read the book. The nature of the errors Bärenreiter have made put what they say there in context. The value of their opinion. Because all those errors reflect their powers of observation, their reading comprehension skills, their care and diligence, their lack of humility, and their understanding deficit. They transcribed figure 49 incorrectly. They put the Pralltrill over the wrong note because they don't know what a fallende sekunde is, and they can't even follow their own misguided ideas or advice regarding a fallende sekunde and the placement of a Pralltrill. And in paragraph 14 of this chapter, which is one of the paragraphs they cite in that extract I just read, and which is an admission that they've read the paragraph, they lack the reading comprehension skills to understand what Bach means when he writes Der Letzte, so there he is talking about the Pralltrill, Der Letzte kann nur auf eine Art, nämlich bei einer fallenden Sekunde angebracht werden, wo gar niemals ein Mordent statt hat. So he says, the Pralltrill can only come with a falling second. If they were able to understand this paragraph they cited in that extract, in the belief that it didn't negate their argument but somehow supported it, they'd know the B flat is not a falling second, and that the sign they put over it can't possibly be in the correct place. And with them thinking, that B flat is a falling second, because their misguided ideas would have them think it is a falling second, they can't follow their own advice when they say you should read after instead of before, and think, hold on, that Pralltrill has to go after the B flat. They can't even, keep that level of misguided as it might be, but it would still be consistency. So, that extract of Bärenreiter's introduction in a nutshell. They perused the text. They only found one place that was problematic, and that of course was a problem of Bach's. None of their own many, many mistakes did they find. Then Bach says the mordent can occur with detached dotted notes, where the dot is not held out. And when you look at Bärenreiter's transcription of the accompanying example, figure 75d, with that paragraph 14 in mind, der Letzte kann nur auf eine Art, nämlich bei einer fallenden Sekunde, angebracht werden, wo gar niemals ein Mordent statt hat. Or with paragraph 4 of this chapter in mind, where he says, bei herunterspringenden kommt sie nicht so oft, bei fallenden Sekunden gar nicht vor. So when you look at Bärenreiter's transcription of the accompanying example, figure 75.3, with that in mind, you could think Bach is all over the place. You could think, what are you doing, Bach? because the E at the beginning makes that D a falling second. And he puts a mordent over the D. So he's like the roll of honor Bach, the Bach of mediocrity, the one who has no consistency whatsoever. You could think that, but then you could look at the original example and see that Bach remains consistent, that the beginning note is in fact a C, making the D an ascending second, and that the fault lies, again, with Bernreiter, in them not being able to either read or understand the text, and in them not knowing what a falling second is. That is how puny those you make your champions are. What happens when someone like me makes claims against the roll of honor, and then is in a position to be able to repeatedly present evidence that backs up those claims? At some point, should somebody not start wondering what the deal is? Or start wondering who they should be listening to? And the thing is, when you make midgets your champions, or false gods, when you make a midget a false god, everybody else has to make themselves smaller, is going to be smaller than the champion. And I've read this in literature. I don't know if it applies any more today in a new culture, but I've read accounts of women who will have, tall women who in the company of men will try to make themselves shorter, appear less tall. So they might hunch over, hunch their shoulders and hold their head down just to try and not be taller than the men around her. And that's what happens. Whereas, if your champions are giants, are not midgets but giants, the opposite happens. When you have giants as your champion, you start elongating yourself. You start trying to be taller. You're able to, realize your true size. And that's the danger. This is just my opinion, but that's human nature. And so the smaller your champions are, the smaller you're going to be. The bigger your champions are, the bigger you're going to be. So it's very important to pick your champions wisely and not take it for granted. When the roll of honor tell you these are great, you examine that. And there are ways to examine it objectively. It fills me with dismay that I think that that ability has been eradicated, has been erased completely. It fills me with dismay to think that there are people in classical music that can't appreciate rhythm, or aren't able to notice a pulse, that can't follow a score, that don't know, that are so swayed by the quality of the piano that they're not able to hear when every single note is present, and not only present but present in perfection, and is not able to follow the voice, the middle voices, the inner voices. With Bach saying the mordent occurs with detached dotted notes, the presence of the mordent in a score over dotted notes could then serve as a clue as to how those dotted notes are to be performed. And with the two examples, Bach provides two different continuations of the ornamented note. The first is leaping, and the other is by step. So a stepwise continuation. In figure 75E, rests follow the note. Another way the note can be detached. Again, the note is leaping, and it is a struck note. In 75F, the mordent is coming in on longer notes that follow short notes with the rise of a second. So between A and B is a step that has the interval of a second. One could wonder if they're meant to be played detached or non-legato. And then in 75G, there is a leap of a fourth between the last of the short notes and the longer F with the mordent, which could serve as a clue to the mordent being short. But then again, Bach said, for the most part. So the smell test should never be neglected. Okay, I'll leave it at that for today, and I'll pick up where I left off in the next video. Thanks. Bye.